What we're going to do today is I want to demonstrate how I inoculate all of my production blocks. So we've got sterilized bags of wood substrate, master's mix, and we're going to inoculate it with our grain spawn. Now, I wait until my grain spawn is fully colonized and nice and white like this one before I break it up and inoculate my bag. That's what I did with this lion's mane here. I've already broken up ahead of time just so it can make a bunch of noise in the video. But once you break it up, it's going to look like grain again, but that's okay as long as you start off with a nice white bag. I've got a couple of grain bags here that are sterilized and ready to be inoculated as well. So what I do is I typically do batches of 12 bags. We're just going to do a couple for this video. But I do my grains in advance, and then I just put it in a Ziploc bag and seal it until I need it. And the reason I don't seal the bag itself is because when you cut the bag open, it really kind of makes a mess. And I've tried this technique, and as long as they don't go more than a week, they work just fine. So I'm going to put these over on my flow hood. Let's clean off the flow hood before we get started. So it's important to make sure you always sterilize your area. I'll just get some alcohol on the ground. We want to make sure always you're using 70% and not 90%. And then I'll soak down my paper towel and my hands. I re-spray my hands after about every 10 steps, or actually so. Then I'm just going to wipe down my flow hood real quick. Now it's also important to wipe down your impulse sealer. Now a quick word about impulse sealers: you want a good one. This thing is probably like $300, but it's worth it. Get a 5 mil minimum. 8 mil is even better, and that's the width of the actual seal. And if you don't want to deal with contaminations or wasting blocks, spend the money, get a good impulse sealer. So I'm going to take another piece of paper towel, soak it down. I'm going to wipe down now my impulse sealer, because if we've gotten any type of contamination on the top of the impulse sealer, we're just going to introduce it to the bag. I don't wipe down the actual heat seal itself, just around it. And then make sure it's always turned all the way up, because I've had just moving this around, sometimes you'll turn down by mistake, so I always check to make sure that's all the way up. So I'm going to push this real close to the back of my flow hood. And the way that my flow hood is designed, it has this top, but this is really made more for culturing. It's not really made for production, but right now I don't have a production area. Once I build one, I'm not going to have a top to it. It's actually better to have an open top. That way, as you're pouring grain inside, you don't run into this top. So I also have a little lip that I put on, so when I'm doing culturing, the lip goes down so I can work closer to the flow hood. But for inoculating blocks, having a little bit of distance is absolutely fine. And having a work area, it could be a roll-up table, or what I did, just like a loose leaf. It gives you more space to work with your bags. So everything always gets sprayed down. I'm going to put these grains of bags aside, just to sterilize bags of grain. Back to these. And you'll see I throw things on the floor a lot, because as you work with a flow hood, you don't want to reach outside of the stream of air. You always want to keep your hands on this side of the flow of air and not outside of the flow hood itself. It's pushing air all the way back to here. So I just throw stuff on the ground and go back and pick it up later. What I also have off the side of the flow hood, there's a bucket on the ground there, so you'll see as I'm cleaning up my bags, I just push all my paper towels right off the flow hood, so I'm not reaching below it. With that sterile technique, I never get any bags of, and none of my production blocks ever get sterilized. And I do 60 blocks a week. So this is our spawn. I'm gonna cover the bag completely with alcohol. And my hands again. And I'm gonna do something here. So you can see here, I wrote on this what the strain was, and I stopped doing that because it leaks and gets all over the bag. Now on the patch, it's no big deal, but I went to little plastic labels That way, as I'm spraying things down, it just doesn't make a mess. So I'm going to do what I call the lightsaber technique. There's a couple different types of scalpels you can use. There's a wide scalpel and a more tight one. I use this for culturing. I don't really use it in production. I use this one in production just because I have more surface area for cutting. Now, if you try to cut this bag with this blade, it's really hard to get through. So what I do is I just heat up the blade. A, you want to soak the whole thing down with alcohol. A, it's more sterile. B, it heats up the blade and melts through. I call it my lightsaber technique. So what I'm going to do here, you would think this would catch on fire with all the alcohol everywhere, but it doesn't. I'm going to heat this up until the blade is red hot. And once the blade's red hot, you'll see it cuts through this real nice and easily. And again, I'm throwing the plastic away. I'm going to open that up. Sometimes it melts the bag together on top. So I'm just going to give it a quick open. I don't want to get my fingers inside that bag or anywhere near. Then I'm going to put this bag of Spawn right up against my flow hood so that we're always getting fresh air and don't get any contaminations in the Spawn bag. So what I do is I'll inoculate my 12 blocks, and then I'll use the remainder of the Spawn to do a Generation 2 bag, which is going to inoculate a lot faster. I'll go up to Generation 3, so every time you do a grain-to-grain transfer, that's an extra generation. After I hit Generation 3, I'll go back to liquid cultures. So I also have a table behind me where I keep my alcohol and some paper towels. Now let's go to the phase where we inoculate the blocks. Keeping my counter clean, and always get your hands. Now, one big mistake I'm making right now is I'm talking. So it's a really, really bad practice to talk, to sing, to whistle, to do anything like that, because you don't want to push air against the flow hood. But for the sake of the video, I have to talk. I might screw some stuff up here. But when I'm actually doing production by myself, I don't touch my phone. I don't have conversations. If I do, I turn my head away to have those conversations. You can play music, but you want your speakers to always be in the flow, like pointing this way, because speakers push out air too. So if you have a speaker this way, it's gonna fight that flow. So I'm gonna grab my production blocks out of my autoclave PC. And I'm gonna do a quick spray in there, pull out all my blocks. And what I do is, even though this countertop is sanitized, I try not to let the opening of the production blocks touch the countertop, just as an extra layer of sanitation, keeping everything nice. So I do, for this 4-foot flow hood, I do 4 blocks at a time. Here we have it. So what I'm going to do is line them up, get my alcohol, get a quick spray down. And now I'm going to take just a piece of paper towel, I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to spray that down a little bit on one side. And I'll just go right down the line. And what I'm doing is I'm wiping the outside of the bag just to prevent any type of pathogens that might be attached to that from going in. I've seen videos where they say to open the bag and clean the inside to get the water out. Don't do that. Don't go inside the bag. It's a disaster. Now I don't want the bag to fall over and touch the countertop, so what I do is I just push the sides, and that holds this up. That's all you have to do. Now I'm going to do the same thing for my other bags. Now, when I open it, I can just let them touch, that's fine. Okay, so I've got 4 bags ready to go. So, now what I'm going to do is open each one of the bags. Again, I'm not going to throw this in garbage. I'll throw it to the side of the flow hood or over towards the garbage, but I'm keeping my hands not on that side of stuff, on this side of stuff. And that's just a better sterile technique. Now with these bags open in front of the flow hood, I never get contamination because you're getting a nice clean stream of air towards the bag. But I do work quickly, and I don't let them sit here long. I get everything ready. We're just doing 4 blocks now, but I try to do all 12 blocks in one sitting. Now that they're all open, I'm gonna take my grain and I'm gonna pour about a cup in. You just kind of eyeball it. I'm gonna try not to let this bag touch the inside of my production blocks. A little bit, it's not the end of the world, but I'm trying not to. Cool. So one 3-pound bag typically will do 12 production blocks plus 2 Generation 2 bags of grain spun. So I'm going to push those to the side. Now, when I go to seal this, I'm going to push the edges slightly. And what you want to do is make sure you don't have any creases in the top of the bag. There's a technique for filling these bags that keeps those creases nice and even. If you have a crease and you seal it, sometimes you won't get a good seal. And then I'm going to press it down. And once it's sealed, I'm going to push the bag and listen for air escaping. I don't hear any air escaping, so that's good to go. Let me quickly do that. Again, I don't talk when I normally do this, and I work as quickly as I can. I seal towards the top of the bag in case the seal doesn't take. I can put another seal on. If you seal too close to the filter, you can sort of run out of space. So listen for each one. I'm also opening this bag into the flow hood, getting some of that fresh, clean air inside the bag. I push the edges a little bit just to open it up. Peeling the bag out from the top, never putting my hands on the inside of it. Good. Okay, so we're just going to do these 4 bags now to not bore you with doing a whole full set of 12 bags. I'm going to use my rag to clean off my countertop again and push it right off the edge. I'm going to go inside that bucket in here. I'll pick it up later. Assuming that I'm all done with the 12 bags, now I'm going to do a Generation 2 inoculation of sterilized grain. This is going to inoculate much faster. And same thing, I'm going to take a cloth, fold it in half, and just spray that. Clean the edges of that bag. Not going inside the bag, just cleaning up the outside. And then we'll put some grain inside this bag. This is a grain to grain inoculation. And then this bag will now, this was G2, Generation 2. This will be Generation 3. So I won't do another grain to grain with this production block. I will then go back to liquid culture. I'm going to open that up, get some air in there. Get a good seal, and then I'll label it later. So the last step in all of this is shaking up your bags of grain. So I used to mix everything in a big concrete mixer and then fill up all the bags. Now I just do all the grains inside the bags themselves because I saw a video saying you're going to mix it up anyways at this point, so what's the point of mixing up the substrate ahead of time? I thought that was lazy until I tried it, and it's really the better way to go. So now we have our bag of Masters Mix, sawdust, and soy hull pellets. We've got our grain spawn in there, and I'm just going to break it up. Now, the important thing of having a good impulse sealer is this gets a little rough. Now, as I break up these blocks in here, I try not to break it up pushing it into the filter pad. I try to keep that filter pad pretty clean, just so that it doesn't create a vector for contamination. Take that bag up. And I'm going to look for little pieces of little blocks in there and just kind of break those up in my hand. Again, I'm breaking it up around the filter pad just so that I'm not forcing any type of nutrients into that pad and attracting any type of contamination. And again, I go through 60 blocks a week. I never get contaminated. Get nice and clean. All set. The next step is to throw a label on there and put it on the rack.